Look at that list table view controller we made before lunch, which is not this file, but rather this file. I prepared for a segue. So a segue is when we go from one view controller to another view controller. A segue, just like anything else that we put into storyboard, is of a type. Its type is UI storyboard segue. Storyboard segues have a property called identifier that is a string. Great. Those segues also have a destination. Great. That destination is a UI view controller. So I got the identifier for my segue, which I had put, well, I'm not going to go back because I got rid of it in order to give you this example. But it's the identifier in the attributes inspector that you assign to the segue. If you click on the segue and then put in a name there, that string that we used was list2detail segue. So I described where is it from, where is it going. It's going from my list, it's going to the detail. Great. Then I said, try to create a view controller. So segue.destination is a UI view controller. Try to instantiate that as a movie detail view controller. So talking specifically about the destination, try to make the destination of type movie detail view controller. Great. I guarded against these things. I said if it fails, crash the app. Fatal error, crash the app. Fatal error, crash the app. Great. So I got that view controller. Then I said, find out the index path for the selected row. So in the table view, in this table view controller, look at the table view and see what index path was selected. Michelle pointed out before, or right before lunch, that there is something very, very similar named index paths for selected rows. Do not use that right now. That is an array of index paths that returns anything, any row in there whose is selected is true. Remember we talked about is selected? If is selected is true, it returns an array of those things. You want just one index path, so make sure you use index path for selected row, not index paths for selected rows. So make sure that the phrasing is singular. So table view.index path for selected row, that's an optional thing. So again, I use a guard to make sure I'm getting a value. Otherwise, I crash the app if it's nil. Bless you. Then I say, okay, that index path, give me its row. So tell me from 0, from 0 in order, going ascending. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tell me what row that is. Row is an integer. So we are saying here, look at movies and give me the movie. So we're looking at our model here. Give me the movie that is in the position of the row that I selected. And all I'm doing is assigning to movie detail view controller. So this instance of a movie detail view controller, which is the destination, the movie at that index. And what that does is it literally sets this property in the movie detail view controller. It sets the movie property, and then in the view did load, I use that movie property to set up the views for this view controller. I could also break that out, set up a private function called set up views. And then I've got a private func called set up views. And then in there, do all that work. That would probably be a better way to do it. Isn't that beautiful? Great. So now, if I go here and I activate the segue, whose identifier is list2detail segue, it's going to try to basically add to the destination view controller this movie, so a part of our data, the movie that we are getting from our model. That's what all this does. It says, if the segue that you are using is this list to detail segue, well, let's try to get some information and see if we can assign that information to the destination. So that's what a segue does there. I'm going to show you a different way to do this. You don't have to use it, and you should also know that it's something you won't be using till later on. But maybe you like it. That's okay. There are multiple ways to do things. You should know this because in some workplaces you only use segues. In other workplaces you might use the thing that I'm about to show you. In other places you might use totally different things. You might not use a storyboard at all. Let me show you what I have done though. I've removed the segue between my table view controller and between the detail view controller. So if I right now click a cell, let's see, I'm going to change up the code. Damn it, go away. So now this prepare for segue doesn't have any segues that it's used on. So let me get rid of the code I just wrote before so that you don't see what I did. So I don't want you to know. Cool. So now if I run it, there's no segue anymore. Anthony, what should I expect to happen when I tap a cell? That's such a great answer. So it doesn't go anywhere. It just sets selected. It doesn't really do anything. Great. If I want to transition between views without using a segue, what I will do is, here's one way of doing it. I can go to my table view controller. I can click on it. I can set a storyboard ID. I'm going to say this is a movie list table view controller. So it's looking similar to other things we've seen before, right? A prototype cell in here has a reuse identifier, right? Movie list cell. The view controller itself can have a storyboard ID. This is about to get really fun. The movie detail view controller, I already set a storyboard ID for. So let's say, got a storyboard ID that is movie detail view controller. Great. Now, if I go back into my movie list view controller, what I want to do is say, every time a row is selected, right? Every time a row is selected, I want to do this transition. I don't want to do it for a segue, but instead I want to use some kind of table view delegate method to say, every time a row is selected, we want to do this transition stuff. Angela, do you have any idea for a delegate method that can respond to me tapping a row? Cool, did select row at. Nice. I'm just going to pseudocode in here. We want to move to the VC with the storyboard ID. Great. That's what we want to do in there. So this function is a delegate method for a UI table view delegate, and its job is to respond when we select the row at whatever index path that is. I just want to tell you again, you asked for this, so that's my warning to you. What we're going to do is we're going to, for now, we're going to instantiate a storyboard. UI storyboard. The initializer says I need a name and I need a bundle. The name is main because that's the storyboard that we're working in. If I go to my info.plist, the main storyboard file base name is called main. And also the file name for our storyboard is main.storyboard. That's why it's called main.storyboard. I'm instantiating a storyboard called name. This is a really roundabout way of getting at it, which is why I do not like it. The bundle, for now, can be nil. Let's take a look back at that. Bundle is some kind of thing called bundle. But if we look at maybe the way that we instantiate UI storyboard, wow, that's not, yep, instantiate UI storyboard. Let's look at the documentation. No. Let's go to storyboard. Storyboard is an object that manages archived versions of your view controllers. Let's look at the init. Creates and returns a storyboard object for the specified resource file. Its presumption is when you try to add a bundle, this is the bundle containing the storyboard file. If you specify nil, it looks at the main bundle of the current application. We don't know what bundles are. That's weird. We've been able to use bundles this whole time because we are in the bundle for the product name. This is weird too, right? Our bundle name gets its name from our product. Our product is multiple MVC lesson repo. We're going to see what happens when we start to bring in other frameworks and other stuff. But right now, you can just trust that the bundle name is whatever you've named this project. So because it assumes that you're in that specific bundle, if you put nil, you can just put nil. What this is saying is, where should I look for the storyboard? That's the bundle. And what is the name of the storyboard that I'm looking for, which is main? That's what this is saying. Now, for our storyboard, I want to instantiate a view controller with an identifier. So what does this look similar to, Nima? Your nail polish? Yeah, so this, let's look at it again. Instantiate view controller with identifier, and then identifier is a string. Give it a shot. Give it a guess. When have we seen something like this before, where you create something using a string in the UI? Yeah, cool. So when we dequeue a reusable cell, right? We've seen that before. We've seen it right up here. So table view.dequeue reusable cell. That looks into table view and says, look for a cell with this identifier. Now we're looking at a storyboard, and we are saying, come on, do the thing. Thank you. Now we're saying, look at the storyboard and find me a view controller with an identifier that's also a string. We gave that identifier to the view controller when we set its storyboard ID. So this is the name that the storyboard that it's on would look for in order to find it. So the identifier for this view controller is movie detail view controller. But just like we've seen before, this instantiate view controller tries to give me back a UI view controller. I don't want this to be a UI view controller. I want it to be a movie detail view controller. Malcolm, can you tell me what I should do in order to make it the type that I want it to be? So this function right here returns for me a UI view controller. But I want a movie detail view controller. Cool, let's downcast. Can you walk me through how to do that? That guy. Cool. What do we know the type of this is going to be? So if I look at, well, I'm going to say var view controller. What is the type of this view controller going to be? Okay. What's the important part here, though, Jason? Yeah. So it's a movie detail view controller, and then there's one specific detail that's important. Cool. So this is optional. So let's make sure when we use downcasting, make sure that you realize it's optional. Otherwise, you could also you can force the downcast, but that might crash your app. So instead, I would say, unless otherwise needed, do some downcasting, and then use optional binding to say, all right, if I am able to get a view controller out of my storyboard with this identifier, and then downcast it to movie detail view controller, then I can use it in this block of code as view controller. I say view controller.movie. This is the same stuff as below, so that view controller's movie is movies at indexpath.row. And then I've instantiated a new movie detail view controller. I don't have a segue to get it where it needs to go. Does anyone know how I can get it where it needs to go? Olympia, any ideas? Okay. So I don't have a segue saying, all right, this is how things are going to navigate in my app. I don't want to prepare for segue. I want to do this all without a segue. Ian, any ideas? So we don't have a tab controller right now, which really sucks, in my opinion. What we do have, though, is we have a navigation controller. So a navigation controller allows you to go between view controllers, and we say that we push a view controller onto the navigation controller. We can push multiple view controllers. So we're currently in the movie list table view controller. That's the table view controller whose rows we want to select to get to the detail controller. What we'll say is navigation controller, so self.navigation controller, the navigation controller that is hooked up to our current view controller, dot push view controller. We're saying on the navigation stack, add this view controller. What is the argument for view controller going to be here, Allison? Cool, and what's that? What's the name of that variable? What did I call it in my code? Cool, so we're gonna push that view controller. I'm gonna say animated is true. So I went and instantiated a view controller here. I did exactly what I did in the prepare for segue. I set the movie on that view controller to something that I got from my model. And now instead of segueing, this is effectively doing the same thing. This is just saying on the navigation controller, so the thing that's in charge of how I get between view controllers, push the view controller that we just instantiated. So let's run it. Cool. 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 The nice thing about this also is that if the optional binding doesn't work here, you could have some else statement where you don't have to throw a fatal error, but instead you could say, do something else. And that's a good question. I don't really see them as having distinct cases. I think that segues can get a little messy sometimes, but I also think they're much easier to set up. I would say you should use one approach or the other, but not both in your app, because then it's a whole mess. What are some other questions? I'm going to push this to GitHub, obviously. Status, get add -p. Yes, 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 yes. Commit. Removes segue and pushes the detail view controller by instantiating from storyboard. Cool. I'll push that up. One last thing I want to show you is our tab bar controller. Who's excited for that? No one is. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Let's say I want to have an app where one tab gets me this table view controller. Another, just for the sake of time, gets me a view controller that has the, let's go find me, David Rifkin. It's going to be hard to find me. Did you know that for the first 20 years of my life, the first person that popped up when you typed in David Rifkin was a murderer? Isn't that cool? He was on Seinfeld. Also, his middle name was David, not his first name. But he was from the same hometown as me, which is really tight. Here's me running the marathon a couple of years ago. Yes, it's my mom's arm. All right. Here's me running it again this year. I'm just trying to get a picture. I want the picture. Oh, this is so hard. Oh. Use the murderer. Okay. All right. So, yeah, great face, huh? Okay. Yeah, well, he did some murders. I'll tell you that much. Cool. Yeah, he's just sleeping. He doesn't care. Okay. So now in my Xcode assets, let's do this, do this. So let's say I want to have an app where on the one hand, you can look at movies, and then on the other hand, there's just an image view with a man that really made things tough to get a job coming out of college for me. And I'm just going to be lazy here and set the image to be Joel, so that I don't need a view controller. I don't want to. No, you just want to see his face. All right. So I want an app where on the one hand, you can see this table view. On the other hand, you just get that wonderful picture right there. Let's figure out how to use a tab bar controller. Oh, yay. Cool. So let's look at our tab bar. It comes with two built-in view controllers. I don't want either of those. I instead want my tab bar to link to on the one hand, this view controller, and on the other hand, that one. Let me show you first how these view controllers work. So I'm going to make one orange, just like I did before, so the view will be orangey, and then the other view will be purpley. And if I look, I know this is getting messy, sorry. If I look at the tab bar, if you zoom in, by default, it names those two tabs, item 1 and item 2, and that's how they appear in my document outline. I can change those. I can make this orange, cool, and I can change what the actual text of it will be. Come on, buddy, do the thing I said to do. Olympia, why not? Why doesn't it work? Let's see. Purple, purple. Let's zoom out. Item 1 and item 2. I'm going to make sure that I move this arrow. You see how I can like do multiple things in a storyboard? I've got basically two different apps going on. One's the creepy one, one's this orange and purple one. Let's run it. Nope, because I told it where the entry point is. So none of this stuff is ever going to get used because there's no way to get to it. But item 1, item 2, cool. I've got 2 items. You can have, I think, up to 5. Maybe that's changed though. I don't really know. I don't really know anything about anything. If you haven't caught on to that by now. How do I change the actual text of the item? Let's look at the attributes. Badge, no. Bar item, cool. I can change the title of the bar item. Then if I go to purple, I can go to the attributes and change the title of the bar item. Nice. So now when I launch it, take a look. They are named orange and purple, but I don't see anything on the tab. I'm used to seeing buttons. So I can go back to the button, I can change its image, I can make it Joel Rifkin, and I can go back to this, go to its image, and make it Joel Rifkin. Now let's see what happens now. Oh no. The image isn't made to fit in that space, so I would probably resize it. I'm not going to do that right now. So we're just going to, get rid of those images. So I've got purple and I've got orange. Those are my 2 tabs. The first one is purple. The second one is orange. Right? Great. That is how a tab bar controller works. The important thing to know is, if I want these view controllers to be in my tab bar, think of the tab bar right now as just working like the navigation bar, where it does the magic that you expect of it. You don't have to do anything else. So I want my tab bar to have as one of its items the Joel Rifkin tab. Great. So all I did was I clicked and I dragged and I set up a relationship segue, view controllers. So one of the view controllers of my tab bar is this wonderful photo. Then I set up another relationship to the other view controller. Great. And so the other relationship is to the movie app. So I'm going to say the item, the bar item's name. So if I click item, because each time I set up that view controller relationship, I can give a name to what the actual tab is going to be. If you click on item, and then you click on the star, which is for the bar item, you change title, that's the text. So if I say this is actually Levi, and then I could go to the other item and I could say, let's call this one movies. Now when I run it, think of the tab bar controller again as just doing the magic. You can do plenty of other stuff, but right now it launches. The left side tab for Levi is this photo. The right side tab is movies. Movies has a navigation controller, so I see a thing on top and a thing on bottom for the tab bar controller. Movies just works how it did before, except that now there's the space on the bottom for a tab bar. So each of these literally just shows different view controllers. And here's something cool as well. This is a navigation controller. I navigate off of that root view controller. So the bottommost view controller was this movie list view, table view controller. If I double tap that tab that I'm already on, it navigates back to the root. It does that automatically with a tab bar controller. That's a tab bar controller. Angela. So I double tap just the tab itself. So that's when I had navigated levels up on the navigation stack from my root view controller in that tab. So I clicked, and then I double tapped to go back.
Can you format the way that the tab bar looks at the bottom?
Yes.
Size of it or any of that stuff?
Size, you could build custom bar items. So a tab bar has in it bar items. Also, sometimes a navigation bar has in it bar items. You could customize the size of those. You could probably customize the type of those. You could add an image for the button if you make that the right size. So like a lot of graphic design for apps is literally just creating icons for things like buttons and for like back buttons, and it's a lot more than just the layout of the screen. It's like actually building the digital assets like the image files and stuff like that to make it pretty.
The detailed view of the movie and the button and the navigator bar and the button and the tab bar all bring back to the same location.
Yes. The difference is if I had a button here that went like to a next view controller, if I double tap movies, it would bring me all the way back to the root. You'd probably use a tab bar view controller not for having an app that does movies and an app that has a murderer, but instead you'd probably do it to separate two features in your app. So like if you had a profile page and then you had a list of posts and articles, yeah, that would probably be separated by a tab bar. What is super gauche, I just want to put it out there right now, what we do not really do on mobile, like we don't do this, is a hamburger menu. What is a hamburger menu? It's the one that looks like a hamburger. We don't really use, where is it? Let's just look at images. We don't really, or as much as possible, we don't. I see there's a financial app. Yeah, hell yeah. I'm gonna send you this one. The hamburger menu is when you tap that thing and it pulls out a drawer of features. You can probably find a better way to do that in your app. Don't do that. Hell yeah. I'm going to send this to Genesis because what you're doing is you're presenting you are presenting most of, but not a whole view controller over another view controller. You're not quite navigating to this view controller in the user interface But to get this to show up, you do have to navigate to another view controller. And it's just a confusion of purposes. Like, this is not what you should be. Like, literally, the whole space of this either needs to know that it's not going to cover the whole screen, or it's just going to need to be literally a view controller that knows about the view controller before it and just takes out the left side of that view controller. We can talk much more about this, but this sucks, don't do it. Because she made an app during her capstone that had one. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, Android apps tend to have those a lot more often. I think they have lines sometimes. The 3 dots is different. The 3 dots horizontally is like an options, where it's like check as spam or something like that. That's different. Tia, can you explain your GIF? Okay. Where should we go back to? 3 weeks ago. I don't think I can do that.